Hello, I'm Ros Atkins. This is BBC News, live from Washington. The Israeli cabinet has voted to approve the Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal after a meeting that lasted more than 6 hours. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the first hostages are expected to be released as early as Sunday. But deadly Israeli airstrikes continue in Gaza. The Civil Defense Agency there says 116 Palestinians have been killed since the deal was announced. Welcome to a special BBC News programme on the Gaza ceasefire deal, which the Israeli cabinet has approved this evening. It's the first phase of a deal which, if implemented in full, will end the 15-month war in Gaza. The meeting of the Israeli cabinet lasted more than 6 hours, with some ministers who threatened to resign arguing the agreement rewards Hamas. The first hostages are due to be released from Gaza as early as Sunday. And in return, Israel says it will release dozens of Palestinian prisoners, including some detainees as young as 16. Hamas will return 33 Israeli hostages over the initial 6-week period. Also, these pictures are from Egypt, where trucks are waiting to bring aid into Gaza. Under this deal, Israel will allow 600 trucks into Gaza every day. That's 12 times more than at the moment. Let's begin with this latest report from the BBC's international editor, Jeremy Bowen.
This is the boy who lived. Assad Khalifa, 3 years old. He's being looked after by neighbors in Gaza City. And that's his cry for help, from the rubble the night before last. He was strong enough to wave. The men had been about to abandon their search. And he was strong enough to try to clear concrete dust from his mouth. The Israelis killed Assad's parents, his baby sister, aunt and uncle when they destroyed the building a few hours after the ceasefire was announced. The background buzz is from an Israeli drone. Miraculously, Assad only had cuts and bruises. He's been taken in by his mother's best friend.
This little boy lost his mother and father because a pilot flying a plane in the sky took a decision and took away all the care he had.
Their neighborhood, Rimal, used to be the richest part of Gaza City. 50 miles away in Jerusalem, the Israeli cabinet ratified the ceasefire agreement. Ultranationalists voted against. They want Prime Minister Netanyahu to resume the war. The faces of the 1,200 killed in the October attacks are everywhere in Israel. This was outside the Prime Minister's office, also a reminder that Israelis are deeply divided over the best way to get the hostages back. Netanyahu's critics say he's broken his promise to rescue the hostages by destroying Hamas completely. Instead, he's made a deal with Hamas.
Our message is very clear, that a ceasefire deal is a surrender to Hamas. We will only support a deal if all hostages are released. That would send a message to the enemy that we are the rulers.
Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition crisis is going to be of little importance to Donald Trump, who's always going to put the interests of his own presidency first. And he wants to re-enter the White House, being able to claim with some justification that he was able to deliver a ceasefire that Joe Biden could not. Now, longer term, the structure of the ceasefire could be a problem because it's over a period of weeks and months and it's in phases. And that gives plenty of time for events to happen that could be exploited by those who want the ceasefire to fail. Outside the Prime Minister's official residence, supporters of the hostages suspect Netanyahu could be one of them. They say he prolonged the agony of hostages and all Israelis by delaying a ceasefire for months.
We lost too many people in fighting. We lost too many hostages from Israeli bombs. We lost too many people from killing by the Hamas. The situation in Israel, the society become very, very bad.
Explain to me why the delay happened.
Shall I tell you the truth, what I think? I think that somebody in the government didn't want that all the situation will finish because of his personally position in his life.
And who was that person?
Bibi.
Netanyahu, the Prime Minister.
Yes.
On the posters, their lives before and after the 7th of October. Happy moments in the past and the gaps left by the missing and the dead. For the families, the wait is an agony. For Israelis and Palestinians, the clock is ticking towards the ceasefire far too slowly. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, let's talk live now to Paul Sham, Professor of Israel Studies at the University of Maryland, who has decades of experience working on issues involving Israel and the Palestinians. Thank you very much indeed for your time. What's your reaction to the news that the Israeli cabinet has okayed this deal?
Relief, but not surprise. I think many of us assumed that Trump's outspoken anger at the idea of the hostages still being held would trump, so to speak, Biden's very nice guy image.
And are you surprised about the terms of the deal, or is this largely what you would have expected going back several months as the Biden administration began trying to shape some form of ceasefire deal?
Nobody should be surprised. The reports since May were very clear, except for the details. This deal could have been had at least 8 months ago.
Much has been made of the pressures and the tensions within Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition. Do you think that he has sufficient political support to see this deal not just through its first phase, but to a much longer-term cessation of hostilities?
It depends on his political strategy. It looks as if the far right will pull out, which would end his majority in the Knesset. However, the question is, can he make a deal with any of the centrist parties, or he can pray that the Hamas leadership or rank and file make some sort of blunder and the ceasefire is off? Then no one, especially Trump, will blame him if he goes back on the deal.
And then let's look at this from the Palestinian perspective. We've had the leader of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, suggesting that the Palestinian Authority could play a role in Gaza, which at the moment it doesn't. Is that something you think is viable?
It may be that they play a role because there isn't anyone else to play it. The PA, the Palestinian Authority, believes that it represents the Palestinian people. In fact, their popularity is in the single digits. There is no way they can come in except if there's no one else to represent the Palestinians.
Professor Sham, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Professor Sham, Professor of Israel Studies at the University of Maryland. Now, as you'd imagine, the US played a significant role in brokering this agreement, and both Presidents Biden and Trump have each been claiming credit in their own ways. At a news conference shortly after the deal was announced, President Biden said its framework followed the precise contours of a plan he first introduced in May 2024. He also said his administration invited envoys from the incoming Trump team to participate in the negotiations for the sake of unity. But as the press conference ended, President Biden was asked about which commander-in-chief can claim responsibility for the agreement.
Thank you.
Books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
And with that, the president departed. Donald Trump has been posting about this on Truth Social. He says this epic ceasefire agreement could only have happened as a result of our historic victory in November, as it signaled to the entire world that my administration would seek peace and negotiate deals to ensure the safety of all Americans and our allies. Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu released a statement thanking both US presidents, but mentioned the incoming president first. The statement in part reads, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with US President-elect Donald Trump and thanked him for his assistance in advancing the release of the hostages and for helping Israel bring an end to the suffering of dozens of hostages and their families. The statement goes on to say, Prime Minister Netanyahu then spoke with US President Joe Biden and thanked him as well as for his assistance in advancing the hostages deals. While both Biden and Trump's Middle East peace envoys were in attendance for those talks in Doha, taking the oath of office in just a few days, President-elect Trump will be the one now tasked with implementing the ceasefire and hostage releases. Well, let's talk further about the multiple issues that today's developments raise. Andrew Roth is Global Affairs Correspondent for The Guardian. He's here with me in the studio. We're also joined by Elise Labbott, Edward R. Murrow, Press Fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations and host of the Cosmopolitics on Substack. Both of you, you're very welcome. Elise, let me start by you. What's your reaction to the news this deal has been signed through by the Israeli cabinet?
Well, I think it's welcome news. As we know, we've been waiting for it not only for months, but certainly over the last few weeks. And we thought there was a little bit of a hiccup of the Israeli cabinet approving it. But now that the Israeli cabinet has approved it, it can go through and we understand it will begin to be implemented on Sunday. I mean, I think it's a good first step. Obviously, the implementation is going to be key, and not just those first few hostages that get out and a lull to the fighting, but certainly over the next few weeks, it's going to be moving from that first phase to that second phase and beyond. That's going to be really critical and unclear whether it will be able to be implemented.
What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's quite extraordinary. You know, the deal up until the very last minutes, it wasn't in the very last days, it wasn't really clear if the deal would actually be sealed. And I think that the information coming out that it was really the product of a kind of combination of both the Trump administrations and the Biden administration working together to a certain degree. That they were able to kind of work together despite the fact that there's a lot of hostility between the teams originally. It's very surprising for everybody. So I think that the deal and the fact that it's at least begun now is quite important.
But it's surely not a coincidence that this has happened just days before Donald Trump takes office. Is this evidence that, for better or for worse, depending on your view of him, he does change the equation by taking office for both the Palestinians and the Israelis?
I think he absolutely does. I mean, you know, it's very difficult to imagine. I think that this deal would have been sealed exactly at this time if we were to see more continuity going into the new term. The fact that Donald Trump came out and said that there would be, you know, all hell would break out in the Middle East if the deal wasn't sealed at that point did add a kind of X factor to the talks, and both sides will kind of admit that to a certain degree. You know, administration officials also say that he added the 10 cents to the dollar so that they could finally get it across the line and get this deal done. The fact of the matter is, though, that both sides to a certain degree have admitted that the other side did play a part in what happened. This is months and months of negotiations that have been taking place. And I think that that framework, along with, like I said, that X factor, really is what pushed it across the line.
And that framework, at least, let's bring this back to you, is now in place. It's been agreed by both sides. What do you think the Americans need to do in terms of planning beyond this 6 weeks, even beyond a ceasefire, for something more long-term and sustainable for both the Palestinians and the Israelis?
Well, I thought it was pretty remarkable when you heard Secretary of State Blinken's kind of final remarks laying out this really clear vision as to how the U.S. saw the situation. And I agree with Andrew. I don't think it really matters who takes the credit or who gets most credit. Both sides worked together. They both admitted that. It was the Biden administration that kind of laid out the plan. And certainly there was that Trump factor, the Trump effect, as we're saying, as well as the new kind of equation in the region with Hezbollah weakened, Hamas certainly weakened, Iran certainly weakened, all of the military action that Israel has kind of launched in kind of reshaping the battlefield in the region, I think really left Hamas kind of isolated. But certainly Trump is coming in. He's pretty clear that he doesn't want this on his plate, but he certainly has a very unstable environment. And if you look at, I would say Tony Blinken should have gave that speech months ago. Not only do you need to see a kind of lull to the fighting, the hostages released, there needs to be that kind of day after in Gaza. What's going to happen? We have to get, Palestinian governance in there. There's talk about whether it should be the PA or another entity, whether there should be a UN entity. I think stability in Gaza is going to be really important. And also that humanitarian component and making sure that aid gets through. That's going to be key in keeping the area calm and making sure there are no violations, because any little violation, you're going to see the Israelis certainly launch more attacks, and then those other hostages won't get it home.
And the PA, which you referenced there, is the Palestinian Authority, led by Mahmoud Abbas. Interesting to hear Elise referencing this speech by Antony Blinken and how she might have liked to have heard it months ago. Do you think that actually the Biden administration deserves some criticism for not being more direct in what is required from both sides in order to move this situation beyond the conflict?
I think it definitely should enter the conversation. And the fact of the matter is that, there are a lot of questions about why perhaps the Biden administration couldn't have put more pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu and on the Israeli government during the negotiations as well. We've seen members of the State Department already resign over this, resign over the question of whether or not the U.S. should have withheld aid or other weaponry to Israel as well. And the fact of the matter is that there is a question that Trump has put into sharper relief, which is if that kind of arm twisting had been put in earlier on during this process, would it have been easier to move the Israelis closer to the table as well? The Biden administration, one of the ways they're kind of combating that criticism in the kind of presentations they've shown of what happened during the last months, both publicly and privately, they say that basically Hamas in every case was the main reason why they couldn't get a deal done. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of questions do remain about whether more pressure could have been put on Benjamin Netanyahu, and like Elise said, whether that speech could have been given earlier on as well.
Can I just add, Ros, that I think there was so much criticism of the Israeli government in that speech. So certainly there was obviously Hamas launched October 7th, put this all into play, kind of caused, I think initially, as everyone would agree, what happened since. But at the same time, if there was so much dripping criticism for the Israeli government walking out the door, as Andrew said, would this have been able to be implemented a little bit earlier if they were put that criticism to Israel? And I'm sure they did some of it in private. But, as many people have said, the Biden administration gave Israel everything it wanted. It asked for very little in return. And by the time the administration was kind of frustrated and ready to put pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, he really didn't have any leverage. So that's where President Trump came in. Certainly Netanyahu wants to work with him for the next 4 years. And he probably thinks that if he, made this deal with Trump now to take the ceasefire, that he'll be able to do whatever he wants after the hostages are out. That remains to be seen. Certainly the U.S. has a lot of leverage here.
Elise Labott, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed to Andrew Roth. And of course, at this moment in the last few days of the Biden administration, we're looking back at the decisions Joe Biden has made as president. And of course, we're looking forwards to what Donald Trump may do when he takes office on Monday. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly promised to destroy Hamas. So what kind of shape is the organization in after 15 months of conflict. The BBC's James Landale has this assessment.
When Hamas launched its brutal attack on Israel on October the 7th, it was a powerful force. It sent about 3,000 fighters across the border and launched about 5,000 rockets. In all, the armed group and political movement was estimated to have about 30,000 fighters hidden in hundreds of tunnels across Gaza. But after 15 months of war, Israel says it is a shadow of its former self.
Hamas has been decimated, their leadership has been eliminated, their rockets arsenal have been destroyed, their tunnel network has been compromised, their operational capabilities have been shattered. They are no longer the force they once were.
Certainly, many senior figures have been killed. Hamas's political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated in Tehran in July. Its main commander in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, was killed in October. The numbers are hard to verify, but Israel claimed in September to have killed 17,000 Hamas fighters. For all that, the Americans believe the group could still come back.
Each time Israel completes its military operations and pulls back, Hamas militants regroup and reemerge because there's nothing else to fill the void. Indeed, we assess that Hamas has recruited almost as many new militants as it has lost.
Those new recruits may have fewer tunnels to hide in, they may get fewer weapons from a weakened Iran, and they may be younger and more inexperienced than the trained fighters they're replacing. But they can still fight.
They still have small groups in some different areas who could fight Israel for a very long time because they work like a militia now, not like before 7th of October as a semi-army in Gaza.
So Hamas is weakened, its ability to mount sustained military operations much reduced. But it hasn't been destroyed, something Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, once promised would happen. James Landale, BBC News.
Well, Israeli airstrikes have continued in Gaza since the deal was announced, killing at least 116 Palestinians, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. The conflict has also caused significant damage to infrastructure across Gaza. These pictures, verified by the BBC, show what a neighbourhood in Jabalia looked like last week compared to before the conflict. Rebuilding infrastructure from homes to public facilities will be a key challenge in the coming years. In May, the UN estimated the cost would be $40 billion. Well, let's talk to Noura Erakat. She's a Palestinian-American human rights activist, an attorney and professor of criminal justice at Rutgers University. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. From the point of view of Palestinian leadership, what do you think should happen in Gaza?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know about the leadership, but I'll tell you about the people. The people are very relieved that there's a ceasefire after 468 days. In a matter of 15 months, Israel has operated without any red lines, dropped the equivalent of 6 atomic bombs, and we've seen the worst kind of destruction on a predominantly population of children. And we've seen children beheaded, we've seen children burned alive, we've seen children evaporated, sniped, frozen to death, starved. And so Palestinians are incredibly relieved about the possibility of the cessation of the sky falling continuously without any safe quarter. And at the same time, Palestinians, be they average Palestinians or those aspiring to leadership or in leadership, should tell us, right, that the ceasefire in this way is not enough for 2 reasons. What Israel has done for the past 15 months has basically set in motion conditions that would not sustain civilian life because of an attack on agricultural fields and potable water, and that ensure that Palestinians will continue to be destroyed and their possibility of future life be destroyed because of this destruction.
And within the context of this deal, if it holds, what do you think those who are leading the Palestinians, for example, Palestinian Authority in the West Bank is saying it may want to play a role in Gaza. What do you think they should be doing in terms of their interactions both with Israel, with America, with the international community?
I think that Palestinians for a long time especially those in leadership, should have pivoted away from the United States, should have exposed its complicity in this genocide. This is a U.S. genocide. Should have worked aggressively to isolate Israel, which has been almost to a near consensus in international institutions declared an apartheid state, has been found to be committing a plausible genocide by the judicial organ of the United Nations, and as such should have been working to apply pressure on Israel in order to cease the destruction of a people. Instead, what we see the Palestinian Authority do in the West Bank is compete instead for a leadership position. And what we should understand about these politics is that they are a blip in history versus what's at stake, which is the future of an entire people. And we should not create a false parity between these short-term political goals and what is the existential crisis facing Palestinians.
We're at the end of our half an hour. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Nora Erekat with us on BBC News. That brings to an end this half an hour. I'll be back with you in half an hour's time as we continue our coverage from Washington.